come on, I am very pleased to invite Denis Yelisevich to join us on air. And I want to say good afternoon to him already, because for Denis it's already afternoon, while for us it's still good morning. Hi, Denis. Good afternoon.
Hello, Alexander. Hello, Dennis.
We started our show in an unusual way today. First of all, Vishivenka Day is still a folk holiday, right? That's how I understand it, Denis?
Well, yes, in modern Ukraine, yes.
In modern Ukraine. So I also saw a lot of people today on social media wearing bright, beautiful outfits. It probably means something, so to everyone who celebrates this holiday. And I congratulate all Jews on the holiday of Shavuot, and I also congratulate the anti-Semites, if only out of spite. Today I'm in a fighting mood, Denis, because yesterday we had Mikhail Sheitelman as a guest, and a few days before that, Roman Cymbalyuk. Well, you can't imagine what we've heard addressed to us and what I read this morning. I get the impression that there's no one worse than Denis Manzar and me. Well, I don't know who else there could be, but we've already reached that point where, as they call it, we're leftists and pro-Putin. Well, once you said a really great thing, Denis. I mean, Denis Yelisevich, you said, well, what am I supposed to do now? Stick a label on my forehead saying I'm not pro-Putin? It seems like we all need to stick that on our foreheads already, so that they would finally leave us alone, at least. What do you think?
As I understand it, the complaints are that Latinina and Svetov come on your show, right? It has to be exactly like that. I'll explain where those talking points come from people who have never lived in a democracy. A lot of what Zlatanina says now, I really disagree with. I really don't like a lot of it. Or Svetov, or even more so, Venediktov. But that's what democracy is about. You have to show all points of view and people will decide. But in Ukraine, unfortunately, democracy is being suppressed. And as for Russians, I won't even start. It's like, if we like you, then you should be on air. If they dislike you, you should be jailed, killed, or expelled from Ukraine. That's how it is for them. Yes, that's how it works. If they had lived in a real democracy, they would know that you need to listen to different opinions. And the fact that you invite Latinina or someone else, it doesn't mean that you are pro-Russian. You just gave a person with a different point of view a chance to speak on some issues, nothing more, nothing less. And a person who, how should I put it, considers himself mature as an individual, of course, will figure out for himself who is right and who is wrong. But here, people think that, like with little children, only what they need to know should be shown. And this is extremely harmful for the future.
But tell me something, Denis. They say that the channel should have some kind of direction, right? That is, it should be funded by someone, right? But it shouldn't be, as often happens. For example, it can be pro-Ukrainian, about Russia, about Israel, pro-Russian, pro-Israeli. Radio Vera in this sense. For example, Gennady Balashov came to us. You come to us too. Thank you very much for that. But at the same time, Sheitelman came, Cymbalyuk came, Roman Cymbalyuk, Mikhail Sheitelman, not to be overly familiar, and someone else, the same Yulia Latinina or Oleg Kashin or Misha Svetov. What triggers these people? They also come to our channel to listen. They could just ignore these people and not listen to them. Svetli, Svetov, Latinina, Venediktov, they could simply say, ugh, I don't want to. They come, listen, then comment on it and say that it's wrong. Maybe that's something you just can't explain.
It's the same situation with me. They listen to our streams from cover to cover. And they spend hours writing those nasty comments during and after the stream. It energizes me. I read it and I'm just amazed at how someone can hate me so much. Personally, and just a few times a week listening to this for 2 hours, both on your shows and others, that's quite a phenomenon, you know, a real phenomenon. Actually, I think they're just kind of losers. Well, if you're fixated on someone, I don't listen to someone I don't like. If I have a negative feeling towards someone, I just don't listen to them.
See, I wanted to tell you that, but you just took the words right out of my mouth. If I come in and see something I don't like, or I don't like that person, maybe I don't like the way they present themselves or something else, or I can't handle my emotions, let's be honest, I just scroll past it. Because why would I torture myself? I'm not a masochist after all. But Denis, I would spend 2 hours suffering, tormenting myself, getting nervous, and then I would write something. They're losers.
That's how it turns out. So their whole purpose in life, everything they can do is just to be petty like that. And they always write lies, you know? If it was something real, something constructive, something that made sense, but it's all lies, just made up out of thin air.
Oh, you mean those comments, right? Of course.
Well, of course.
Dennis, let me ask you this question. The first question that came to me today is for Denis Yelisevich. Dennis, tell us, why are decisions about Ukraine's future increasingly being associated not with Kiev, but with Washington and Western organizations? If decisions are going to be made in Washington, then who is really running your country today?
The country is not being run by any one specific person today. The country is torn apart today. And of course, Zelensky makes many decisions. But he acts so confidently because he is backed by certain structures connected to the US Democratic Party and globalists. He is under their control, under other clans who are interested in this war because there's huge money involved and there are carve-ups and struggles for influence. Of course, a lot is decided in Washington. Another issue is that Ukraine is not a top priority in Washington today. If it were a top priority, the war would already be over. But as it is, well, as long as they're weakening Russia, that's not bad. There's the Iran issue and the delayed Cuba issue, which was supposed to be resolved earlier, but should be settled within a few months. And unfortunately, Ukraine is not the top priority here for now. Zelensky has been given an ultimatum. We're waiting. There are 3 weeks left until it expires. We'll see what happens next.
Yesterday, when Mikhail Shettleman was here, he works in analytics, and he said, I'm telling you this first, and no one else has heard this yet. What is this as a percentage compared to Denise? He was telling us, Denis Manzar, I mean. Yesterday, Mikhail Shettleman mentioned 3 names and some percentage. Who holds what? There were some percentages. Yes, that's right.
But that was his own poll, yes, but on his Telegram channel.
Yes. Who will be the president of Ukraine in the near future, right? The first was Budanov, the second was Zaluzhny, and the third was Olena Zelenska. Zelenska. That's the comment we heard yesterday. What do you think about it?
I think that Shettleman is a propagandist who gave people 3 options and all 3 are wrong, incorrect. And you all are there choosing, arguing, fighting, and quarreling. Well, look, there was this myth that Ukrainians would want a military president as their next leader. Like he would guarantee us protection. That's a myth. That's a myth. Today, confidential polls show that 90% don't want a person in uniform, whether it's from the special services, the military, and so on, because people are just fed up with military rhetoric. It's not about personalities or who's good or bad. People are just fed up. No, of course not. They listen to the nonsense of someone like Zaluzhny, the inhumanity of some other speakers who say the war shouldn't end, and that this war is forever. There will only be pauses and ceasefires, but this war is forever. Who wants to condemn themselves to a life in the trenches with no end in sight? Ukrainians also deserve happiness. They just haven't been told yet. That's how our whole history is. And the anthems, everything is so full of suffering, like everyone owes us, we have to suffer, cry all the time. I'm absolutely against that. And so, Shettleman, like a classic propagandist, gives 3 options. He would have included Zelensky there, Zelensky himself, but why didn't he do that? Because even on his own channel, the rating would be 0. It would actually hurt the current president. So he put Olena Zelenska instead. It's almost mockery, I would say. It's mockery. Why don't we put, I don't know, Verka Sergeyevna, Serdyuchka? By the way, Andriy Danilko is a decent person. I mean, as a person. Let's put Verka Serdyuchka forward. That's pretty much the same thing. Budanov, Zaluzhny. Unfortunately, I helped Budanov early on when he became head of the president's office. I see that I did it in vain. He has descended into some kind of nightmare, and today on Vyshyvanka Day he confirms it. And Zaluzhny is just nothing. Zaluzhny destroyed his own rating himself. He had a real rating according to private polls, I'll tell you, 35%. The Americans measured it, 35%. Today it's already less. Less than 25 in just a few months. At the end of last year, it was 35%. Why? 23 public statements, 34 idiotic posts on social media. That's it. Now people react like that. In other words, it's about nothing. And I'll tell you more. I didn't say this on your show. I said it on Liber TV. For myself, I always conditionally divide people. Like for me, there are positive characters and negative ones. That's normal. Both are normal. I don't have to like all of them, just like not everyone has to like me. But the worst thing is being neither fish nor fowl. That's neither fish nor fowl. Zaluzhny is like that, neither fish nor meat. In reality, no one knows, no one can figure him out. What is he like? What does he stand for? What is he against? And unfortunately, Budanov too, I can already say, also fits that classification. Neither fish nor fowl.
You just said an interesting phrase. You said Ukrainians are also made for happiness, though they don't know it yet. Yes, and thank you. before that, you said that there are people who say, let this war stay over there, or as they say, eternal, with some breaks for rest. How? Who could want, I mean, from Ukrainian society for the war to be eternal with these little breaks?
First, those who are under globalist control, since this is a purely globalist agenda for Ukraine to be the shield of Europe, and it's not a country to live in, it's a buffer between the civilized world and Russia to protect the civilized world. Second, those who profit from this war. Third, there are a few, but such people exist, maybe about 10%. Well, 10% is actually a lot, especially with totally brainwashed minds. And also, probably about 10% are people who are in a psychological trap. That is, because of the war, because of psychology. Psychological factors, they're so saturated with it, plus propaganda, this information bubble. If you say that tomorrow the war will end for good, and we need to think about the development of Ukraine, and in general what we will do next, let's think about it. Their whole paradigm breaks down. Everything they've imagined and been told over the years vanishes instantly. They're not ready to admit it, showing immaturity, but that's okay. It can be fixed.
And these 10%, the ones who are brainwashed, are they mostly elderly people or young people?
Different. I want to tell you, Ukraine's deep state has heavily influenced young people. They've worked very powerfully on the youth. For example, my audience, I'm talking about the majority. I have some very young people who have been watching me since they were 15 and now they're already 19, and there are such people. Some viewers have watched since they were 13 and are nearly adults now, writing to me. Still, most of my audience is 25 and older, people who understand a bit more. This 18 to 24 audience, let's say, is owned by someone like Sternenko. Maybe you've heard of him. We have a guy like that here. These are the ones who work for the deep state. Huge amounts of money have been invested. Their channels were developed with the help of networks. They're promoted everywhere. They organize fundraisers. In short, they're seen as positive heroes, but with a terrible background. A criminal, plain and simple. And so they messed with the minds of the youth. I have to admit, they played it very well here. Big money, they did everything. They won this niche, but it's only temporary too.
So you mentioned the second category, those who make money from the war, that's clear. But the first one, remind me again, please, Dennis.
The rest are brainwashed propagandists and globalists, or those working for them. That's what I meant.
I wanted to ask you about this category. Well, actually, I've already been asked. When Dennis says globalists, who does he mean?
Well, I've explained this many times already. It's not something you can explain in 3 minutes. These are people who, I don't know if it's sincere or not, see the world as global, but only in a way that's beneficial to them. In short, let me be direct. I won't use any standard phrases. These are the people who are sure that they see the world correctly, and the right world for them is the one that allows people like Soros to control it and profit from it. They may want to spark a global conflict somewhere, to settle migrants there. So, in their view, that's globalization. Let's bring people from Africa to the center of Europe because it's a global world, everyone is equal and so on. Well, these are basically the same leftists. Thank you.
Yesterday, I asked Mikhail Shetelman about Yevgeny Murayev. He has started posting now. He was on our radio about 6 or 7 years ago. Back then, I think he was still an active politician in Ukraine, if I'm not mistaken. Or he was involved in media, or he had a TV channel, something like that, I think. Thank you. And now he's posting these strange videos, you know. First of all, I haven't seen him in a very long time, and now he showed up, and one of them was like, look at what's happening. Zelensky passed a law about anti-Semitism. Do you remember we talked about this? And look at what's going on. It's obvious who's to blame if you get 7 years for murder, but 8 years for anti-Semitism. And he started pushing this. Why is he doing this? Why did he suddenly show up at all? And what's the point of what he's doing?
Well, actually, the anti-Semitism card, specifically this kind of radical anti-Semitism, is being played by Russia, by Russian security services. This has always been funded. There was a guy, Igor Berkut, who had a theory called Heavenly Jerusalem 2.0 about Jews moving to Ukraine. Have you heard of it?
2.0. I've heard about this theory. I know about it, but I didn't know who came up with it.
Igor Berkut, who chats and speaks like a really good, solid actor. His speech is well put together, he's charismatic, and that's how he captivated those impressionable minds. So, he walked around Kyiv with security, affiliated with the FSB, meaning he has nothing of his own, but he lives a certain lifestyle, lots of bodyguards. So it's clear he's someone working on a certain agenda. Yevgeny Murayev. For me, I also consider him an absolutely pro-Russian figure. And I'm not saying he should have been dealt with like when his business was taken away. But in terms of his rhetoric, he's purely anti-Western and pro-Russian. And he's definitely my outright opponent. So, of course, he, like many in Ukraine, kept working the same way. Currently, he has his own niche, opposing Zelensky, but with a pro-Russian tone, and identifies 3 trigger points. So, yeah, 8 years for anti-Semitism, I'll play on that. The crowd rises up, as he says correctly, here's who's to blame for everything, you know? Tomorrow, something else will happen. For example, Honcharenko says there's serious mobilization in society and a popular uprising against the military recruitment offices in Ukraine. Honcharenko, well, sociologists, he has a big team and a lot of funding. Funding, they read this, that's it, hit this point, then that one, and that's how it goes. That's how professional politicians work. They don't work like I do, like an ideologist who, whether the ideology or proposal works or not, whether people like it or not, I still do it. But they need to be elected. That's the key.
Yeah, so that you would choose them. As far as I understand, that same Burayev is also not in Ukraine today, Denis, or is it Ilyas? Well, he
said he's in China, but I know he was seen in Vienna after the war. You see, Burayev can do whatever he wants now and say the right things about something, but when the war started, he just disappeared. Sure, he left, but then vanished from the media spotlight.
Yes, that's not true.
I didn't post on social media, but in the first week of the war, I stated my public position. He stated his position before the war, but then disappeared during it. So, he was watching to see which way the scales would tip, and then the British press comes out and says that Putin planned for Murayev to be the Gauleiter of Ukraine. I'm not sure if that's true. I'm just sharing what the British press reported during the war's first week. And that's basically it. Murayev had just one path like that. We're actually spending a lot of time on him for some reason. Like, Ukraine should be with Russia, constantly trading with Russia, the European Union, the Western world. That's bad. We're close, that sort of thing. It's like dooming Ukraine to become another Belarus.
No, I only used him as an example, not referring to him directly. Many people like him are probably being filmed right now. And you were right. You need to find that trigger, like the Jewish topic or something else, and use it to promote yourself and, so to speak, attract a large audience, which is probably what's happening. Dennis, thank you. Dennis. Yes.
Well, by the way, Murayev was called pro-Russian even before the war. So, in general, people have been saying this, I think, from the very beginning. But, Dennis, that's not what I wanted to ask you about. I wanted to take a step back for a moment. Dennis, you mentioned some kind of ultimatum to Zelensky. Honestly, I just wanted to ask, what kind of ultimatum was that? Because we haven't really heard about it.
No, I told you about it.
Did you miss it?
Elections were planned and the final ultimatum was given to Zelensky until June 15, until mid-June. Well, Trump's birthday and America's 250th anniversary. That's it.
I got it.
Yes, after that, he needs to focus on the midterm elections, so Zelensky was expected to announce elections in Ukraine. I don't know what kind of agreement they had there, whether to officially announce it publicly or just publicly acknowledge that elections are needed and, agree to choose a date. Those were the kinds of discussions. Of course, Zelensky didn't do that.
Because when I search in Google for ultimatum to Zelensky, I get a whole bunch of ultimatums, it turns out.
It turns out
the Hungarians gave Zelensky an ultimatum. Just a few days ago, then someone else gave him an ultimatum too. Well, I won't. It doesn't matter. That's not what I'm talking about. Yes. So the ultimatum, right? So Merz in Ukraine, they were shocked by Merz's ultimatum to Zelensky. Interesting. Well, there are a lot of ultimatums. I wanted to ask, now I'll probably get criticized too, maybe by the opposing side, to briefly return to a topic that I don't know has probably already been discussed to death, but still, let's sort of wrap it up. Maybe it's about the release of Mr. Yermak. Yes, well, maybe it's a naive question. Were you surprised by his release? Yes, on bail, after all. They managed to collect the amount for the bail. Do you know what happened to him next, where he went, so to speak? And, well, actually, yesterday's news that Mr. Minnick filed a lawsuit, not only against Zelensky, of course, but also, as far as I understand, against Nabu and so on. So against the Ministry of Ecology and so on in Ukraine. What do you have to say about this?
Well, first of all, about Yermak, I watched the court this morning. There was another court session about Yermak today, an appeal regarding the pretrial restraint order. They challenged his bail release, but failed as the judge upheld it. I was again interested to hear the prosecutors and Yermak's nonsense. The prosecutors once again clearly explained that there is correspondence from the interior designer in these houses, meaning with Yermak's father. Yermak's father, as foreman, represented Yermak's interests. And we were talking about millions of dollars in outside funding, unofficial, not matching Yermak's official income. And it was clearly stated that Andrei wants to oversee the construction. So everything is absolutely clear. Yermak was playing dumb there. His lawyer probably doesn't even need to pretend. In short, it's such a disgrace, you know, it tears you up inside when these crooks profiting off the war's bloodshed act so brazenly and try to play dumb, as if everyone else is an idiot, and at the same time they constantly hide behind the military. Everything will go on, and from what I know, Yermak still has more surprises ahead.
And regarding Mr. Mindich's lawsuit,
well, yes, he filed it, yes, and the sanctions there are only for 3 years, not for 10 years, but for 3 years. He filed a lawsuit. They have to put on a show. Maybe they'll even lift those sanctions for him, you never know. Thank you.
by the way, yesterday Mikhail Scheitelman and I also touched on this topic. Hypothetically, if we assume that those sanctions are lifted for him, then both you and Mr. Yermak, along with others like him, could file the same kind of lawsuit. Because again, in our conversation yesterday, Mr. Scheitelman said an interesting thing, that in no country in the world, well, yes, he even gave an example. For example, the United States, they cannot impose sanctions against their own citizens.
Sanctions have not been imposed on me, it doesn't concern me, and sanctions have not been imposed on Yermak either. Only relevant to Mendel. Sanctions were imposed on Poroshenko, who has unsuccessfully sued for years. No one yet. Wait.
Haven't there been sanctions against you from Ukraine?
No. No.
It was against Gennady Voloshov, I remember that, on the same day as Yulia Latinina, by the way.
For some reason I thought that, oh, well, I must have been mistaken, sorry. For some reason I thought that Dennis was also sanctioned.
Thank God. Oh, yes, yes.
Yes, that's right. It was Gennady Voloshov, my apologies.
Only against Gennady.
Yes?
Dennis, is it possible today in Ukraine they're asking you to openly criticize Yermak without the risk of being declared part of the Russian network?
If that were possible, I would have stayed in Ukraine. You can't do that now. Not since mid or late 2022. You can't say anything at all, not even a millimeter different from the official propaganda. You simply can't physically do it. Unless you are a controlled opposition, because there are figures there who are made into controlled opposition on whom all this so-called electoral opposition is gathered. These are fake figures. 23 people are supposedly allowed to criticize publicly. Supposedly, sometimes.
So, does that mean it's like this now and it was like this before too?
Yeah. There's this one guy, I won't name him so as not to advertise, but he's like a young blogger who was artificially created, and he can write things like, Yermak is a scoundrel, Yermak is a thief, young people come and support him, and that's basically where it ends. Well, that's a classic trick to create a fake opposition, attract people with opposition views, and then just bury it all quietly.
The question is, why did Ukrainian intelligence basically admit that the scandal around Yermak has become an international problem for the Ukrainian authorities?
Not exactly. Yesterday, indeed, the Foreign Intelligence Service, FIS, made a statement that Russia... So they gained access to documents showing that the Russian Federation's special services are now becoming more active, and the Kremlin is tasking them with destabilizing Ukrainian society. And at the center of all this, there will be two main stumbling blocks. The first one, and they specifically mention it, is a media scandal around Yermak.
That's the first one.
What is a media scandal? It's when the second most important person in the country is exposed for corruption and laundering tens of millions of dollars. The Energoatom scheme is worth $100 million. By the way, the prosecutor said that the construction of these houses was financed from there. Energoatom is the largest energy company in Ukraine. You could say, well, it's nuclear energy. So this isn't a media scandal, it's a crazy corruption scandal, but they turned it around. And secondly, the interview with Yulia Mendel. That's Tucker Carlson. Honestly, everyone in Ukraine has forgotten him.
And why is that, by the way, Dennis?
To discredit. This is discrediting. It's a completely disgusting story. Because the intelligence service comes out and says, by the way, the intelligence service is under Yermak's control, the SVR. So they come out and say, you can't say anything at all about the current situation. You can only praise Zelensky and say forward, forward, war, war. I mean, this isn't even Russia anymore. This is something even worse. So basically, you have no rights at all. You don't belong to yourself. You belong to the state. Simply put, they're telling you to go die, or at the very least, shut up. They say, well, and secondly, you asked about the discrediting of Mendel. So basically, with this kind of message, I call them hamsters, for the hamsters, they've convinced them that Mendel is a Russian agent. That's it. So it turns out if you tell the truth today, tomorrow the SVR comes out and says, Russia gave him the task to rock the boat. So what are you supposed to do then, excuse me? The war is in its 5th year. Zelensky is in his 8th year in power. Did you know that? Yesterday marked the start of the 8th year since Zelensky has been in power. What's next? Are we going to tolerate Zelensky an endless war for 25 years like Putin and Lukashenko?
So that means if someone criticizes the current Ukrainian government, they automatically become a pro-Russian spy.
Of course, that's what they said. So today I'm speaking out, and they can easily say, look, he's carrying out the plan of Russian intelligence services. We told you, so that means it's all 100% true. But you know, society understood everything. I checked the comments on all social networks, and except for those 10 idiots, everyone mocked and criticized it, because everything is clear to everyone. And you know why they made this statement? I'll tell you, it was pretty radical. Why did they do it? I think it seems to me Zelensky lost the media war. Zelensky lost the media war, and now they're kind of having convulsions. You know, they're going to extremes. We didn't succeed, society figured it out, so let's just say that this was all Russia's plan. Actually, you probably don't remember this trick. It was useful to Zelensky for obvious reasons, especially for people who don't live in Ukraine. There was something like this under Poroshenko. Poroshenko came out and said, all right, dear friends, Russia is launching the Shatun plan. Shatun?
What is that?
So they called it the Shatun plan to shake Poroshenko's power, to destabilize the situation in Ukraine as soon as Poroshenko became president, right after the Maidan. Then there was Shatun 2. During the war, there was also Shatun 155. And this is just another Shatun plan. When you've lost in the media, the special service comes out and says, everyone who criticizes is following Russia's plan. But you have to admit, that's mean.
By the way, I just read here in Ask Dennis, doesn't it all look like the authorities want to hide Ukraine's internal problems behind talk about the Kremlin's hand? That's exactly what you were just talking about.
First, that's obvious. Second, these aren't just Ukraine's internal issues. In Ukraine, just like in any country, though especially in Ukraine, there have always been a lot of internal problems, even before the war and before Zelensky. We're now discussing cases that are outrageous even by Ukraine's standards.
Is it possible to assume, Dennis, that Yermak has become so influential today that he's practically being equated with Zelensky himself?
No, that judgment is outdated. It applied when Yermak led the president's office.
Thank you.
Yermak is losing his influence, and this whole story has made him a super toxic figure.
Thank you, Dennis. Maybe it's not exactly related to, let's say, internal Ukrainian politics, but nevertheless, I think definitely you can't separate it from the war that's going on today. It's literally been, well, probably a week now, maybe even more. Well, of course, we had heard this before, the talks about a possible attack by Vladimir Putin on Ukraine. They choose a NATO country, one of the 3 Baltic states, or maybe all 3 countries will be attacked. So, accordingly, the explanation seems sufficient and in some ways maybe even logical. Yes, so Putin gets a window of opportunity because Trump has a negative attitude toward Europe and NATO, pulls out his troops and so on and so on. Putin needs to raise it again, so to speak. His authority in the eyes of the world community, so when, if not now? Plus, of course, naturally, in order not so much to distract attention from the problems of the war in Ukraine, where Russia has clearly stalled. But nevertheless, what do you think about this? How much, in your opinion, is it really worth talking about and thinking about?
Dennis, to be honest, I might not have caught or understood the essence of the question myself.
Hello? Well, do you actually consider it a real possibility that Russia might attack one of the countries in the near future?
Of course not. That's pure nonsense. You understand? We've talked about this many times. I basically say this in every broadcast. If you look at their statements, you'll see they claim that Russia's economy is stagnating, it's on the verge of collapse, Putin is finished, we need to finish them off, we need to keep pressing, then there will be peace. The next day they come out and say Putin is preparing an attack on NATO. How can that be at the same time? Please explain. Either it's falling apart and going bankrupt, or it's preparing to open a second front. Can you imagine what it would mean for Russia to open a second front against NATO? Well, that's unbelievable. The financial cost, how much that would cost, where would they find the manpower? First of all, where would they find the manpower? Today, 90% of the Russian Federation's ground forces are on the territory of Ukraine. Can you imagine that? What second front? They understand all this perfectly well. Second, despite all the problems with NATO, I can't stand those bureaucrats, but I respect the structure, they do have some military power. It would be no joke. Also, why does Putin even need this? Tell me, why does he need it? Well, as they explain...
No, I mean, how do those who promote this theory explain it? This, accordingly, will help Putin gain political points again in the eyes of the world community, because today people have forgotten about Putin. We can see this, and well, based on the results of his trip to China, although actually it seems to me that it's still too early to talk about this, but nevertheless, yes, many say that he failed this very trip, just like Trump. Well, actually, if before it was really Putin, well, I guess he was the main newsmaker, yes. And today the main newsmaker is Donald Trump, so Putin supposedly needs to overshadow that somehow by any means and make people talk about him again. What else could it be but a new war?
Going to war with NATO just to score points internationally sounds extreme to me, but it seems to me that this doesn't quite match the goal. There are 1,000 simpler ways to do it. Putin has economic influence and energy leverage around the world. Opening a second front against NATO is kind of over the line.
Dennis, I want to ask you. Ask Dennis, it's very important. Information has been received from the Foreign Intelligence Service, I don't know who is writing this or who received it, about Russia preparing to destabilize the situation in Ukraine and undermine its support. What do you know about this, Dennis?
That's what we were just discussing. I just told you about this plan, the one involving Mendel, Yermak, that's the operation.
Destabilization, got it. Why, Dennis? Are we Ukrainians once again being asked to endure another winter while the authorities and grant-funded elites continue to live safely abroad? I'm sure you have something to say about this, and it's not just you and me who see it well, but also many people living in Ukraine.
Honestly, I didn't understand it either.
Why are Ukrainians being asked to endure another winter again? I haven't heard anything like that.
I haven't heard anything like that. Ukrainians aren't being offered anything. I'll tell you honestly, Alexandra, no one has said, endure another winter. No one is saying that. We woke up today, thank God, tell me. That's the message being sent.
Yeah, and doesn't it look like the people of Ukraine are being prepared for an endless war? You talked about this with no clear deadlines or exit plan. I mean, there should be some dates, right? At least some approximate ones, Dennis?
No, they don't mention any approximate dates. And we just keep fighting and fighting, that's it. Putin is about to fall apart, about to die, and so on. None of that means anything. That's actually part of the complaints, but we're already late to be asking that. It was relevant a couple of years ago. But there still has to be some kind of plan, as was rightly said, for getting out of the war. There should be some logical vision that the head of state communicates to society. This just doesn't exist. Guys, I said to fight, it's the right thing to do because I said so. So we fight.
Dennis, why hasn't there been any talk about negotiations lately, but instead there are constant calls for a new round of escalation? Well, there must be some explanation for this. People can't endure forever.
There's a direct explanation. Zelensky doesn't want peace. Zelensky needs war, because only then will he keep his power and immunity from the legal consequences of everything he's done. That's the whole motivation. That's how simple it is. It just doesn't get any simpler than that.
And what do you think about the people who left Ukraine, who came to Canada, to the United States, or somewhere else? Many of them, the ones I talk to here, say that they'll go back home when it's all over. So they think this will eventually end. Dennis?
Thankfully, some people say things like that, and I can tell you from my own personal observations, 90% of those who told me 2 years ago that they wanted to return are no longer saying that. They've already settled in those countries, they see all this hopelessness, the horror of what's happening, and no, they don't want to return. If someone says that, of course, that's very good, but for that to happen, people need to believe.
You know, you're absolutely right. I've met people who say we're going home. Before, even 6 months ago, there were a lot more of them than there are today. And I know people who were getting ready, planning to return, and today they no longer are. As for the elderly people who have lived there all their lives, who left behind an apartment or some relatives, they talk about this topic. But young people more and more see their future in the countries they move to. I completely agree with you.
Yes, I would say unfortunately, because I would still like everyone to come back and for Ukraine to live differently, not just somehow, but in a very clear way. I've already talked about this. But it will be hard to convince people now. It's possible, but very difficult. Neither Budanov nor Zaluzhny will be able to do it. That's exactly the issue. So if Budanov or Zaluzhny becomes president, what will they offer? Tomorrow I'll stream and talk about how Prime Minister Sveridenko presented a political program, but it's just laughable. So you need to offer something unique, something that will be in Ukraine but won't be in, say, Poland. If he's offered in Ukraine the risk of war with Putin, constant mobilization, militarization, kids learning to operate drones from the age of 5, and the highest taxes, government pressure, pressure from the security services, lack of freedom of speech, the borders could suddenly be closed. So who would go there? Or they'll come after you for speaking Russian. Harass you.
Ask Denis if there is an economy in Ukraine and if the energy sector is basically on the edge. Why do they keep, as I said before, offering society not peace, but even more war? The situation is at a dead end. People are struggling financially and life is getting harder. In the end, is it possible? The question is whether something like a revolution or a coup could happen in Ukraine, or at least something similar. Ukrainian society.
No, you can't do anything during such a dictatorship. Things like a popular uprising against the military recruitment centers, it happens, but those are just the recruitment centers, it's not the direct authority. Not directly against the authorities, just like in Russia, the dictatorship is so strict in both places that it's physically impossible. Especially since there's martial law in Ukraine.
And why are Ukrainian elites increasingly discussing the fate of their country at closed meetings in London and Washington instead of with their own people? Thank you.
Good point. There aren't any closed meetings in Washington, but there are some in London. Recently, one of the main Soros supporters, one of Soros's servants in Ukraine, Daria Kalinyuk, was there. She was actually filming a video and saying, "So I'm in London right now." Showing London, I'm in London right now. At a closed meeting, not the first closed meeting, where there were many generals either retired or active. Yes, probably retired. British, Australian, and in general, it's a very secretive circle, and they said the war will last another 4 years, basically. That's it. Get ready to fight. Rat-a-tat-tat. What? Why do these Soros people need reforms in Ukraine peace? If they're being paid for all of this, if they're making money off this mess and the war, so why does she need it? Does she need a market? Is she competing with someone? Are they outside the market? They're funded by Soros foundations. War, peace, they're funded by Soros foundations. She was told the agenda, she went and voiced it. That's it. But nothing is really decided there, no matter how they present it. That's how it is in these clubs. In other places too.
In other places.
Not in these, yeah.
Well, here we are already. Of course, we talk about this very often. We keep coming back to it from one broadcast to the next. Yeah, because, let's put it this way. Many people counter you with the question, what kind of peace can there be? On what terms can this peace exist? When the world itself doesn't understand what these terms are, and so to speak, Russia is the one putting them forward, literally. Just recently, in another statement, the press secretary of the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov, was asked about this. Does the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the territory of Donbass mean, accordingly, the signing of a peace agreement? He said no. And this only means one thing, that after this we will be able to sit down at the negotiating table. So how should we understand this? There are none of these, basic conditions. We don't understand them. Not long ago, people used to talk about this so-called anchorage spirit, yes, and so on and so on. But that spirit has been gone for a long time, and it's completely unclear now what conditions Russia is offering or what conditions, for example, Ukraine might agree to.
It's absolutely clear. Ukraine can't agree to any conditions except for ending things along the current line of demarcation. Ukraine's EU membership, which Zelensky could leverage in upcoming elections, and personal security guarantees. Everyone understands everything. Everyone understands. We just need to agree on the rest of Donbass and withdraw from it. US security guarantees ratified by Congress, an $800 billion fund, a Ukrainian welfare fund of $800 billion. Absolutely everyone understands everything. Is anything unclear to anyone?
Well, no, it's not clear. Fine. What are Russia's demands?
Withdraw from Donbass.
Yes, but Peskov repeats himself. That doesn't mean we'll stop. Yes, withdraw. Yes, we'll stop. Yes, withdraw.
Leave Donbass.
We'll talk further.
It's naive to think the Kremlin would have a spokesperson say, do this and there will be peace tomorrow. That would show weakness. Why would they do that? I agree.
And where are the guarantees that they won't continue and say, well, you left Donbass, that's great, let's sit down at the negotiating table, and now we need the Odessa region?
And we have US security guarantees ratified by Congress. US investments in Ukraine, that's the security guarantee. If BlackRock invests in Ukraine, it's not so that everything can later be handed over to Putin. Oh, in Ukraine, it's not for that?
So that everything can later be handed over to Putin. Have you heard it? Ask him. I haven't heard this statement, Dennis. Maybe you have. The head of the office of the president of Ukraine, Kirill Budanov, stated that Rus is Ukraine and that we should be the ones to dominate Russia. The Russians stole our history. Did you hear this statement or not?
Yes, I heard it and mentioned today that he made several strange, foolish statements. You know, talking about some kind of domination, especially since, of course, well, naturally, I'm a staunch opponent of Putin's Russia. But talking about dominating a superpower, when we're the poorest country in Europe, it just sounds ridiculous to me, sorry. That's a foolish statement. What domination are we talking about? We have nothing to eat and live on loans. What kind of domination?
Thank you.
And do you consider Russia a superpower, Dennis?
What?
Do you consider Russia a superpower?
Well, of course, they have nuclear weapons, they have energy resources. Honestly, it's unpleasant for me to even say this, but I'm not a propagandist. I have to deal with facts. And people really need to understand how things actually work.
And such a statement?
The one made by Budanov? Yes, Denis, what was the purpose of that? He said it for a reason.
Yes, for society. It's just for society, for those percentages I told you about. It's a super statement. Just a super statement. Now they'll feel like they're great. You see? So Putin tells a different version. Ukraine doesn't exist. It was created by Lenin, this, that, and so on. And we can hit Miami and New York with Poseidons. With a nuclear Poseidon submarine. That's it. The poor, destitute Russian thinks about how great we are. Russia, onward to Berlin. He has nothing else in life to be proud of. There are people like that in Ukraine too. Turns out there are many. They have nothing to be proud of except these lofty phrases and all the rest. But in practice, there's no money. No money, no people. Do you understand? Now people talk about it as if it's something ordinary. First of all, I saw statistics about schools. All the upper grades are empty. There will be graduation soon in a few days. Next year there won't be any children in the schools at all. Ukraine started with a population of 52 million, now it's 22 million. So how? What greatness? Can we create it? The answer is yes. That's what I'm suggesting to do. But these empty phrases, when we're dependent on everyone, that we supposedly dominate someone, why am I saying this? Right now I'm launching my merch and one of the main slogans is Make Ukraine Great Again. And people come to me and ask, Dennis, what do you mean again, if Ukraine was never great? I also refer to Kievan Rus. Ukraine was once among the world's top 5 economies. That's my perspective and I don't wish to debate historians. But I say that we can do it and they say that we are already great. That's the big difference.
You said when Dennis...
If you don't mind, a bit more detail. I'm just curious about Make Ukraine Great Again.
Well, of course, that's the slogan I use because people need to be inspired and given an economic goal.
Prosperity.
This will give you security guarantees against war, against Putin, against interference, against everything. It's the only guarantee of success. A powerful Ukrainian economy, a free country, the right way of life, democratic foundations. Not what's happening right now. Right now in Ukraine, it's some kind of hybrid of Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, and North Korea. And they come out and say, it's not like it is with Putin. So how is it? How is it?
Well, you can't argue with that. No, but about Kievan Rus.
Yes.
So you say that you kind of put Kievan Rus, well...
Here. Yes, yes. Well, anyone can check the internet now. You know, the economic indicators of Kievan Rus production, any of them, it was among the top in the world at that time. All of this was also on the territory of Ukraine, Kyiv. So I suggest we repeat that, just not by going and seizing some land. We have enough land despite current issues, even without Donbass or Crimea.
We have enough land.
We don't have enough people, though, but we can bring them back. There's still time to bring them back. When brains are the main resource and true value, it will be a whole new story.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
since we've already mentioned Belarus, these joint exercises on the tactical use of tactical nuclear weapons, how do you see it? Again, the West sees this as a real threat of another attack on one of the NATO countries.
No, nuclear weapons can only be used against Ukraine, unfortunately.
Ask Dennis this. How interested is the American President Donald Trump in Ukraine today? Or has he completely stepped aside? And if so, does that mean it's a death sentence for Ukraine and Ukrainian society?
It's not a death sentence yet. He hasn't stepped aside. It's just not a top priority. It's not a top priority. But the most important thing, well, this will sound very unpleasant, but my audience is ready for it. I've always said Ukrainians can handle the truth. So what's the situation? Putin doesn't care about his own people, and Zelensky doesn't care about his own people either. Russia is becoming isolated. It's getting weaker. No matter what, it's getting weaker. Are the people okay with this? They are. Well, then go ahead. Kill each other. When you get tired of it, I'll help.
Subtitles. When you get tired of it, I'll help, if you mean Donald Trump, maybe.
Yes. But if Volodymyr Zelensky is offered a reasonable way out of the war, reasonable in what sense? I keep emphasizing that there are provocateurs and scoundrels everywhere. Given the circumstances, it's reasonable. Still, it's a terrible ending, but you must choose between a terrible end or endless horror. So, what Donald Trump is proposing is, of course, a reasonable solution in the current situation. I didn't even expect that it would be possible to part ways like this.
Let's get back to the subject. Wait, Dennis, I have a question for you. Sorry, Dennis. You said Donald Trump was offering a good solution. Can you specifically say what this solution was? How did Donald Trump put it?
I already said. The solution was to leave Donbass. That doesn't mean we left and Russia came in. They discussed a free economic zone there. Different formats. The fact that Ukrainian troops will leave 18 areas of Donbass, where there is no life anyway, if anything, is not some kind of huge catastrophe. That's just how propaganda presents it. It's not a huge catastrophe. It's terrible, but not catastrophic. We need to withdraw, settle Donbass's status, and get US security guarantees. I'm not sure if a non-aggression pact will happen. And that's it.
What's wrong with this proposal where Russia withdrew? I mean, what you just said. Why doesn't this proposal suit Zelensky?
Because he will end up in the dock next to Yermak if he loses power. He'll lose presidential immunity.
Thank you, Dennis. A question from our chat. Honestly, I didn't understand it, but maybe you'll understand it. Ask Dennis if Ukraine's fate is being decided in London and by Soros. Maybe Trump should try to end the war through Europe since Zelensky isn't independent.
But London and Soros are Europe. The main thing is, European leaders, including those in London for now, know.
But here, if the question is put that way, London and Soros, yes. So now I have yes, well, maybe Trump needs to negotiate an end to the war through Europe if Zelensky is not independent. That is, as I understand it, maybe Trump should start negotiations with someone like Soros. Or with those, well, who are sitting in London and making these kinds of decisions.
Like people found everywhere, in London, Paris, Brussels. They visited Trump at Mar-a-Lago, promised to handle things, then left and did nothing, in fact did the opposite. Merz and all the others. That really happened. Now you know, right, that the European Union wants its own representative at the negotiating table on behalf of the European Union. Putin says, Schröder, But we've talked before about how Schroeder is essentially bought by Putin. It's just ridiculous. Well, more precisely,
Yes.
good. Then Merkel. Merkel refused. By the way, in my opinion, she's not much different from Schroeder. Merkel refused. Now they're choosing the president of Finland and maybe someone else as the second one. And the US agreed to this. Well, if you want, go ahead. My prediction is that nothing will change. That's not the point. Nothing will change.
The question is so trivial, but still, since you're insisting, I'll ask Dennis. Dennis, the question is for you. Actually, you often mention the name Soros. Who is Soros? Why does he rule the world? And why do you think he is so influential that he can make Ukraine stop being Ukraine or vice versa?
Well, who he is, people can look up on the internet. It would be strange if I started telling Soros' biography. Why is he influential? Do I assume or think so? I don't assume. I don't think. I know. 95 media outlets in Ukraine are controlled by Soros. A political party in parliament is controlled by Soros.
Did you say 9?
Soros determines the media in Ukraine.
Only in Ukraine, Denny.
No, not only in Ukraine. Almost all over Europe.
And what about the United States?
Well, the Democratic Party does too. He funds judges and prosecutors during elections. You know this happens in America. And these judges win the elections. Well, in America, judges are elected. It's not like in Ukraine, where Revensky appoints whoever he wants, or Poroshenko, or in Russia, Putin.
Mm-hmm. Dennis, could you please tell me what is happening with Kolomoisky right now? Where is he and what's going on with him?
He's in pre-trial detention, attending court hearings, and remains in good spirits.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting situation developing. Yes, we're talking about London, about Soros, and about Donald Trump. That is about countries and various kinds of alliances that could stop the war between Russia and Ukraine. But somehow, in my opinion, China is always left out. Don't you think that China is the only country that can really solve this issue? If they want to, I mean, of course. Today, honestly, even just 20 years ago, it would have been hard to believe that today the American leader would go to the chairman of the Communist Party of China, Xi Jinping. In a few days, literally in 2 days, the leader of another major country, Russia, Vladimir Putin, will go to meet him. Yes, and everyone is writing about how Xi Jinping is welcoming them. So it feels like both of them, not that they're vassals of China, but at least it doesn't look great, let's say, to put it mildly. What do you think? If Xi Jinping really wants to end this war, can he actually do it or not?
He could strongly influence things, but he won't want to. He buys cheap energy from Russia. I agree. Due to the war, Russia can't sell globally as much as it wants, but it can sell to China at a low price. That's exactly what it's doing. About the meeting near the plane. Ukrainian propaganda really spread this a lot. They showed how badly he greeted Trump and greeted Putin even worse. And they're going crazy about this, like look how Xi humiliated all of them. Who
he shook hands with.
Yeah, they just made up in their minds that Trump was bowing to Xi Jinping. If you saw that, that never happened. It's a complete fake. But the idiots picked it up anyway. I'll explain it to you. Trump never greets anyone at the plane. That's just his way. What kind of greeting does Trump give? When you arrive at the White House in a limousine, does he greet you personally or not? For example, when Zelensky and some Europeans visited, no one greeted them. Sometimes he comes out, sometimes he doesn't. That's how it works here. In China, there's a video later when Trump was brought in, they're walking on the red carpet and there are these kids jumping around with spoons.
Something like that.
It's pompous, pretentious, expensive, just as it should be. So what's the problem? You see, this is a very dangerous thing. When people don't want to talk about the main thing and about what really affects something, they'll find some nonsense, shift the crowd's attention there, and it seems like the issue is gone.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. I also remember, do you recall when Putin flew to Anchorage, how he was received by Donald Trump, and it was the same red carpet, planes overhead, getting into Putin's cars and so on. So yes, wow, this is not for nothing. He's his best friend. Two real big friends have met, and now everything is clear. Ukraine's fate is sealed, and so on and so on. Here, Trump invited Xi Jinping, or Xi Jinping invited Trump, I think, somewhere to a botanical garden, yes, where he was also telling him something that's also a sign, and so on and so on. Did you not follow this at all, the course of these negotiations? And can you evaluate them, both the negotiations with Trump and the negotiations with Putin?
I followed the course of the negotiations. Based on the information I have, they won't affect anything we'll see in the foreseeable future. These are long-term strategic matters, and not something that will be in the news tomorrow.
Interestingly, besides all the stuff we've been hearing, one person here wrote God knows what in a message to Denis Yelisevich, that it's no longer about Ukraine or Russia, but about America. So, Denny, what does that mean? And so what they're writing here under Patriot of the USA, that you love America, that you like the United States, and that you're a troll supporter, all Trump supporters, it all sounds like an accusation, Dennis, not just a comment. So they want me to ask you, are you really about America or not?
From a Ukrainian political view, I'm focused on America and the West.
What does that mean from the point of view of Ukrainian politicians, Denis?
Well, from the perspective of Ukrainian politics, Ukraine is clearly moving toward closer ties with the United States. This is the only scenario in which Ukraine can prosper and live without war. And now there is a historic chance. And values and the Constitution must come from here, not from the other side. Yes, and that's a reason for some kind of shame.
But this is very important, by the way, with the current American administration or with the United States in general. Because as we can see, in my opinion, these are slightly different things.
That's a good point. I'll put it this way. With the current administration, there is a historic chance to truly become allies or strategic partners. And unfortunately, tragedy has somehow brought us to this point where we have this historic chance. As for the US, its foundational constitution, the founding fathers, the idea of freedom, capitalism, all of that. 15 years ago, well, you would agree with me on this. You wouldn't have asked me this question. 15 years ago, of course. The US, Democrats, Republicans, it's all the same in this sense. Freedom of speech is inviolable, capitalism and all that power. And today the world has gone crazy thanks to that same Soros. Many people consider Soros a conspiracy theory, but if you go to major Ukrainian media, to the section about sponsors, it's on their websites everywhere, you'll see Soros's foundations everywhere. Alex Soros comes and takes pictures with Yermak. Many other things as well. For example, you have Benediktov on your show and he knows Alfred Koch.
Yes, of course. Look.
Let him tell you how Soros lent money to Russia in the 90s. And Soros did many, many operations, and I think he was even in direct contact with Koch. Hello?
Hello?
Let's do this. There was that influence, but he was simply kicked out of Russia.
But Koch often says he doesn't remember. Do you remember if you watched the interview with Dud? He kept answering every other question like, well, I don't really remember.
Yes.
Well, by the way, sorry, please, if you wanted to say something. No.
I'm just saying that he has such an interesting manner. He forgets very quickly.
No, well, once we had Alexander Goldford on air. You probably know him, Dennis. He lives in New York, the one who sued Channel 1. That was when Litvinenko was poisoned, and he had some involvement there. He was friends with Berezovsky. He had some kind of connection. He used Soros's funds, and he doesn't hide it. Here's a question. Where was he then? By the way, yes.
If there's someone we should really ask, it's him, actually.
Dennis, let's be honest. When Trump promised to end the war between Ukraine and Russia in 24 hours, none of that happened at all. So why do you like Trump?
I'm tired of answering this question. It's a matter of values and the madness the world has descended into, starting with men winning at the Women's Olympics, gender-neutral bathrooms, and all that. We won't talk much about this right now. And ending with the outrage that, among other things, led to war.
You said, Dennis, that Ukraine will survive if it is allied with the Americans. Aren't you afraid that the Americans will turn your Ukraine into just another one of their states, and that there will be no more of Ukraine's wonderful culture and way of life?
Well, this is a typical example of that kind of mindless follower. And basically, after comments like this, I don't lose heart, but someone else in my place probably would, 100%. This person is trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist yet. I think all Ukrainians would be glad to live as a US state right now, wouldn't they? Let me remind you that New York City's GDP is higher than all of Russia's, and California's GDP is also greater than Russia's. Just think about that. And they're saying that as a state, Ukrainian culture, what would that even be like? I mean, how would that even work? Today is Vyshyvanka Day, which is Ukrainian culture. But honestly, let's move on. Well, moving on. There's no freedom of speech. Men are being killed by their own. They're being dragged to the front. The economy, I'm not even going to say where it is. Everyone from abroad has left. A terrible war is going on. Zelensky has usurped power. The trial of Yermak is underway. He's playing dumb. Next, what are we going to do about this culture? Why do Americans have to destroy Ukrainian culture? Give me one reason for this.
Thanks. That's an interesting question.
You see, it's just that fools sit around making things up, and many people actually believe it. Many people believe it.
And why not do it?
They'll take it apart. Well, this Putin guy came along, took some of our resources in Donbass. What happens next? So what happens now? Do I or this person own these resources? No, they belong to those in power and the oligarchs. What now? Should we work with the Americans instead, since it might be more fair and transparent? And really, at least partially in the interests of Ukraine? This conversation is for adults, Alexander. We're not used to that in Ukraine.
I see. Yeah, I don't even know what to say. I guess you were just talking now. Wait, now about Ukraine, about 30%. No, I won't read that. Ukrainian culture will remain, and now it's all over the world, like with Ukrainian Canadians. Well, Denis was right. Well, we celebrate the holiday, we put on Vyshyvankas. Denis just said that, Yelisevich. And what next? So what next? The war will end. And as I understand it, no one is saying that we shouldn't do this.
Let's make the Vyshyvanka a symbol of success, not something that makes people pity us. Besides, it's been totally discredited. Today, these Vyshyvankas are worn by ordinary people who just want to. Everyone in politics, I'm surprised that Yermak didn't come to court in a Vyshyvanka. I can send you 10 photos right now of top corrupt officials who posed for pictures in Vyshyvankas. The top Ukrainian-speaking Vyshyvanka wearers.
Mm-hmm.
You absolutely understand.
That's Anton Krasovsky posing in a Vyshyvanka. Laugh at the Vyshyvanka.
Denis's question. A question for Denis. The question is, in the Russian Federation, the budget deficit in May is higher than the annual plan. Inflation is insane, and the military enlistment offices are empty. Why did you decide that Russia's staying power is greater than Ukraine's? Because
Ukraine lives entirely on borrowed money, and the national debt is over 100% of GDP. Ukraine's debt is already 110% of GDP. Russia is still fighting with its own resources. Russia's GDP is $2 to $2.5 trillion. Putin still receives enormous funds every day. Every day, enormous funds from energy resources. Enormous. Russia's military budget is $150 billion. The population is 140 million people. Okay, let's say 130, let's say 120. That's still several times more. I'm not being illogical. I'm saying logical things right now. I don't like it, but those are the facts.
how do you assess Ukraine's attack on Russia? And what do you think? Will there be a response, so to speak, to this reaction?
There was a response and another will come. This is war.
It's still war. Brilliant, right? How would you assess this attack? How do you assess the attack? Brilliant.
Yes, those who are here today, you're probably waiting for the attack, right? And
actually, coming back to this topic a little, in your opinion, how dangerous is it? I mean, well, obviously this is war, and really probably no one here denies that. And we see, by the way, just yesterday I think Bloomberg wrote about war. I think Bloomberg wrote that this is actually causing quite significant damage to Russia, specifically, I mean, the oil refineries, especially in the central part of Russia. There was even some percentage mentioned in general. Well, it's unpleasant, to put it mildly, despite the fact that in Russia they deny it and say, no, it doesn't affect us at all. Nevertheless, by the way, today they already wrote that in the Ryazan region there are problems with a budget deficit, with gasoline and so on and so on. But Russia can respond. And this escalation, this back and forth of we'll do this to you and you'll do that to us, well, it's clear where this could lead. In your opinion, how dangerous is this? And how do we get out of this situation on the one hand? So it's impossible not to respond, right? As you said, this is war.
Sit down at the negotiating table and make peace. As for the damage to Russia, of course, it exists. But this level of damage will make it end the war. And in general, do you see a situation where Peskov, Putin, all of them, Lavrov come out and say, you know, our oil refineries have all been destroyed, we surrender, white flag?
Well, look, Denis, I'll just say, for example, in Russia, for instance, they call them the liberal opposition, so to speak. That's how they present Vladimir Putin in the eyes of their audience, yes. This is a person who, let's say, should wake up in the morning and feel some kind of joy. Today he's getting tired of the war in Ukraine, yes, because there's no progress, yes. He's losing his popularity again in the eyes of the world community. People aren't talking about him. He's rarely remembered. Trump comes to the forefront and he likes to draw all sorts of arrows on maps and so on and so on. He needs some action. He once said it and everyone picked it up. What do you need for that? You need to start a new war. And for that, you need to attack some NATO country. We choose a country that we can attack. The most, let's say, acceptable one. It's one of the Baltic countries, because they're small, because they're practically undefended, because it's realistic. Maybe, as they say again, it would take about 3 or 4 days to occupy it. That's it. Yes, I mean, for the Russian audience, or rather for those who are watching this, basically Putin is presented exactly like that. Not exactly as an idiot, but as some kind of senile person who's bored. He's just bored with everything. He likes war. He likes to play these games. Today he's bored with the war in Ukraine. Now he wants a war with NATO. That's how it's presented, and people believe it. That's why so many people talk and write about it.
That's nonsense. Only someone like Portnik would say that. Well, that's just absolute nonsense.
Why? Well, for example, Michael Naki talks about this too. But if you, Maki,
well, if you, for example,
say something against it and say, listen, we've been sitting here for 4 years and listening that Russia is running out of shells, running out of missiles, wild inflation, people are dying of hunger, there's nothing in the stores, everything is bad, and so on and so on.
Yes, but no. And who says that, Dennis? I don't quite understand.
Well, just turn on any channel, yes, and listen.
Michael Naki,
for example, talks about this, but those who speak against it.
The war, do you know what they're called? Liberal ethnics.
So in his eyes, I mean, like, yes, for example, Radio Viera, those would be liberal ethnics. Well,
all right.
So these are people who say we're also against the war, we don't want it, we're against it, but they will still promote the so-called pro-Kremlin position. He thinks this is a pro-Kremlin stance.
If that's the case, I understand. But Michael Naki, yes, but by the way, I rarely listen to him, so I'm not really aware of his. Michael Naki is an idiot.
That's all that needs to be said about him. Actually, many channels discuss this.
About that?
That Russia is finished, that Russia has no money for this war.
Everyone says it continues. This is being promoted by the same funds I told you about, the ones Naki probably uses too, and so on. It's all from one source. Even Garry Kasparov could be writing this. It's all being pushed by the same group. And some people who are completely in their own world, I don't know. Maybe they actually believe it themselves, but judging by what they say, it looks like they've really bought into it. And so they come out and say these things, and you look at them and think, where are you even? Do you live on Mars or something? But that's how propaganda works. That's exactly what propaganda is. Do you really think Kasparov or Michael Naki actually have the goal of taking power in Russia and really pushing Putin out? Take down Putin? Of course not.
Here's what the real goal actually is. I don't want to offend anyone right now, but we can see from what's happening today with the Anti-Corruption Foundation. Yes, well, it's already so messed up and they don't even deny it anymore. People trusted them, people gave them money, people donated to them, and they just wasted it all. They sent it wherever they wanted. There you go.
Sorry, Alexander. I get the impression that places like RBC and all those opposition organizations in Russia, I just can't believe there are so many idiots among those people. I get the impression that Putin has sent his own people there so they could plant Trojan horses everywhere, over there. I can't call it anything else. It's just so ineffective. And once I was shown their budgets, I was just shocked. It's millions, tens of millions of dollars, and the Khodorkovskys are helping a lot. That's all huge money. And honestly, I'll tell you, I'm 100 times more effective alone against Zelensky in Ukraine than all these organizations put together. Because I have different goals. And most importantly, I have proposals. What do they offer? They offer nothing. For them, it's just Putin is bad because we said so. Okay, he's bad. You know that.
They're busy sweating and working hard to figure out how people can donate to them without getting caught so they don't have any problems. They come up with all sorts of schemes and surround themselves with a bunch of legal entities. The main thing is, God forbid, that people don't get hurt, but they still want them to pay donations. Where did the money go? That's not important. Now they're starting to figure out where those donations went.
That's how Soros's people work in Ukraine. The main thing is donations from funds, grants. And in Ukraine, even if it's a complete mess, whatever happens, they don't care about anything. And of course, the main thing for them is reforms. Why do they need reforms? They're already living well.
Dennis, this is Yulia. What's her last name? The correct one?
Mendel.
Mendel. She could have given an interview to anyone, to Fox anchors, for example. Why promote that anti-Trump, anti-Semitic Carson?
Is this what a person thinks? That Yulia Mendel or Yelisevich is sitting there like, okay, Fox News, press the button, and now I'm already in the Fox News studio. Probably everyone should call and invite you. Invited you, let's go.
You said that well. It really gives the impression that you or Yulia are just sitting and waiting to be invited to give an interview.
Thank you. Well, you just press a button and you know you're already there. It was Tucker Carlson who invited her, so she went to Tucker Carlson. If someone else had invited her, she would have gone to someone else.
And would you have gone, Dennis?
Yes, I already said, of course, even to such a scoundrel. That's not the point. The point is the platform.
In this situation, then I want to ask, going back to the beginning of our conversation, when you at Radio Vera are such scoundrels, you invite both this one and that one, and today you have Denis Yelisevich and tomorrow Scheitelman. Or because, what is that sound, guys? I can hear it. It's a bit distracting for me. Or is it when someone has something running, or when the same Alyona Kurbanova says, I won't come because you had someone there? That's probably not a very sound position.
Well, that's the start of our conversation. Look, yesterday you had Scheitelman, who was probably saying things opposite to what I think. I didn't watch, but I assume so. Zimbalyuk was there before that, or after me, last week after me, completely opposite. I watched a little bit of it.
Yeah, I hear myself too. I'm kind of like, yeah.
Guys, Dennis, maybe it's something on your end because there's a lot of echo. You need to turn something off somewhere.
No, everything seems fine on my end. Now there's echo, yes.
Yeah. How is it now, Dennis?
Well, let's check it now. So, that's the essence of journalism, as I said. Both viewers and any proper channel want different points of view. But what I'm saying is, since they don't understand democracy, everyone should sing the same song.
Please ask Denis Yelisevich a question. Why on the Ukrainian channel where you appear do you not speak Ukrainian even though the host speaks to you in Ukrainian?
Yes, by the way, that's actually one of the ideas of the channel, to have people speak like they do in Ukraine. In Ukraine, it's very common to walk around, see someone, and they speak a different language. You speak Russian, they speak Ukrainian, and that's how you communicate. There are even couples like that where the husband speaks Ukrainian and the wife speaks Russian, or the other way around. That's what Ukraine is like. There are couples like that in Switzerland, in Belgium, and in all countries where there's more than one language. It's all very simple. I think in Russian. And hundreds of millions of people in the world speak Russian, and only about 20 million people speak Ukrainian.
That's right. Guys, I'm going to disconnect for a second. Maybe it's something on my end.
Because somehow, yes, I'll try, but no, it's not with Alexandra. It's probably something else after all.
Yes, it's still there. Thank you.
We have a phone call, Dennis. If you don't mind, we'd like to listen to it. Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning, Ufi. Hello, what's your name?
Yes, good morning. From the Baltic side. Yes, that's when they provide the airspace or even the territory for launching Ukrainian drones that attack Russia. Thank you.
Guys, 1 second. We got a message that there's no sound. Dennis, do you see the comment? Please let us know now if you can hear us or not. I just got a message. There's no sound at all.
Yes, I see that. Yes, the question can't be heard. So the question was, Dennis, you didn't hear the question, right?
I heard the question.
Oh, you heard the question?
I heard the question. Now everyone can hear. Everything's fine. What was the question, since many missed it?
The first question was about, I took notes. The first question was about migrants in Ukraine, that they plan to bring in 5 million and that every third person on the street will be a migrant from Asia. And what will happen then? How will Ukrainians be identified? And so on. I am the most radical opponent of this idea of bringing in migrants. It's one thing when migrants are brought into prosperous countries because there are jobs that the local population simply won't take, and they are needed for economic growth, or the economy is growing so fast that there aren't enough workers. For example, what happened in the Arab Emirates, that makes sense. But bringing migrants from third world countries with a completely different culture into the center of Europe is a monstrous mistake, and it's wrong. And the main thing is, just think about it. This is Orwellian. Ukrainian men are being killed, they're leaving, they're staying at home, hiding from the military recruitment office, but an Indian or a Bangladeshi will be able to walk around and work freely in Ukraine. Is this common sense or is this insanity? Of course, this is insanity. I strongly oppose this. I support creating conditions for Ukrainians to return home. No, this is not some kind of nationalist thing, but we need to create conditions. Let people come to us from Moldova, from Belarus. Let them come from the Baltic countries. How about such a proposal? We need to create an offer and build that kind of economy. That's what we should focus on. Everything else is just the destruction of Ukraine. And I guarantee you, I first of all predicted all of this. It's not difficult. This is not a coincidence. There was a plan for this. What will happen next? If they implement this and then they naturalize these people, the naturalization process will be very fast. In a couple of years, these people will get the right to vote. That's all. Who will they vote for? The ones who brought them. That's the first question. The second question was whether it's a provocation that the Baltic countries are providing Ukraine with a platform for drone attacks against Russia. That's an incorrect question, because Ukraine was shelled through Belarusian territory and troops advanced through it at the beginning of the war.
Mm-hmm. Please ask Dennis why it isn't possible to do things in Ukraine the way they are done in the United States. 6,773 ignore mobilization, or what needs to be done for this? Since everyone refused, the authorities switched to voluntary recruitment.
So today, 99% ignore it. 1.5 million men are staying at home to avoid going to the front. 1.5 million men.
Thank you. 1.5 million, Dennis.
Yes, 1.5 million. That's nearly everyone, and I think just as many have draft deferments. 1.5 million. Everyone?
Look, there are a lot of Ukrainians living here in Vancouver, Canada, who have arrived recently. And they still have relatives, friends, and classmates back there. And now they're saying the same things you are, that they don't leave their homes. They're afraid. And how freely is this information available in Ukraine? Or is it just discussed here by those who left? Thanks.
No, everyone knows this. How could it be otherwise? Everyone knows it. It's absolutely public. Why else would there be those popular uprisings against the draft offices? People are rescuing others to prevent their mobilization and to help them.
Basically, the Rothschilds. No, that's not it. In Ukraine, Ukrainians have to work, but the government pays for everything. Guys, I can really hear it. The sound is bad, Dennis. There's an echo.
Yeah, but it's distracting.
Maybe it's somehow connected to my Denis Mazarov. What? No.
It's not about you. It's still somewhere in our system.
Dennis, well, I want to say that when you talk about this on your channels, the people who listen to you, after all, you already have a very big channel. Are they somehow trying to attract you or more people to listen to you, or what do they say to you? Your viewer, your listener?
Everything I have is thanks to my audience, my people, and only because of them does anything work out. Of course, they show it. Well, for the most part, this process has already happened. People have already shown my channel to everyone they could, to those who want to listen. This process has already happened. That is, almost everyone has already seen the channel, about 90% of those who could potentially be interested in it, I think. Only those needing persuasion remain.
Is your audience mostly listeners from Ukraine or from all over?
Yes, it's Ukraine.
Mostly. And as you said, it's different ages, right? It can be young people, it can be older generations.
From 25 to 70.
Do you have an active audience on your channel, Dennis?
Yes, I think in the Ukrainian political segment, it's the most active.
This Ukrainian channel that you appear on, I think it's called Liberty, right?
If I'm not mistaken, Liberty, yes.
So this Ukra, what kind of channel is it? Is it one of the main channels in Ukraine today or not?
No, it's a new media outlet.
And here's a question for you. Do you ever appear on Ukrainian channels and do they invite you there?
Except for Liberty UA, no, because the others are tied to intelligence services and propaganda. Why would they invite me? I'm blacklisted everywhere.
Well, that was actually the next question. And can you come to Ukraine today? Listen, I'm not going to ask you why this question came up. Ask Yelisevich why he didn't surpass Vankin. Of course, I can ask you if you want to answer this question.
Yes, like Professor Preobrazhensky, I don't want to.
There are no more comments on this matter, Dennis. A question for Yelisevich. No, I won't. How can they not know that there are 1.5 million men in Ukraine who are hiding, who are in the same situation, and yet no one can help them? And how can Yelisevich help them? What can he do to help?
I can help them by explaining how things might be and what needs to be done. That's what I do. And bringing people together around you. That is, they know that there are many people like them, that the propaganda is deceiving them. And that helps a lot.
You just said how it could be and what to do. I understood how it could be, but what should we do?
Well, within the resources we have today, it's media pressure. That's what you said, to show some materials that they show in the media and propaganda. To send all this to each other, people are doing this. For example, I translate, Jared Kushner spoke, and not a word about it was said in Ukraine, even though he was talking about Ukraine, I showed it. Or, for example, Trump's former advisor Cortez gave a speech, they hide this in Ukraine, I show it.
Please tell us, Dennis, because this is extremely important and interesting to us. What did Jared Kushner say regarding Ukraine, and why did he touch on the Ukrainian topic?
Because he's a specialist, one of Trump's special envoys for peace talks on Ukraine. He was specifically referring to the peace plan you, Dennis, asked me about. He talked there about the peace plan, about the proposals, about his vision. He said that Ukraine's GDP per capita could very quickly triple. That's what I keep saying all the time. Thank you. So, he used economic arguments. Why do I actually like this in general? If you say it yourself, people might still think about it. But when Rubio and then Kushner said it, they realized I was right.
Would you go if Gordon invited you? Would you go on his show? And why do you never participate in debates? Well, is it true or not true? Not true. Dennis participated in debates on our channel. You just didn't see it. Secondly, Dennis Yelisevich doesn't refuse to take part in debates. And I have offered it to Ukrainian journalists more than once without mentioning any names or surnames. But so far, I haven't received agreement from any of them.
Alexandra, let's ask, where are debates held in Ukraine?
I don't know. I'll ask you.
Man, where in Ukraine did these debates happen? No one's heard anything about them. Where, on what grounds, and on what issue have there been debates in Ukraine in the last 5 years? Tell us.
Thank you. Do you mean debates between politicians or someone else?
Any kind of debates, when two people with opposing points of view met on some broadcast and it was shown to people. Well, come on, let them show me.
And tell me, please, yes, I don't really remember anything like that. I don't recall actually seeing any debates. And would you go to Gordon if he invited you?
Thank you. And that's a question, you know, yes, I would go, but he won't invite me, so.
Well, and regarding now I'll ask you about the debates. Yes, when I suggested it to you and you said, yes, please, and I tried. Yes, but none of those I offered it to, and I won't name them now. That's not nice. Agreed. Why do you think that is?
I've already answered this question for you because there will be another point of view that will completely destroy their arguments. They will look bad. They can't allow that to happen.
Thank you. When I said that I was talking to you just now, and I said it in Ukrainian or something, I said it, I don't remember, and I was told that I was supposed to say in the Ukrainian language, and also somehow how much does it really hurt? That maybe I said something wrong to those who think it's inappropriate?
No, it doesn't offend anyone. You've lived in Canada for 30 years, so why do you need to speak Ukrainian now? What's changed?
Here I've had situations more than once where I met people who speak Ukrainian and don't want to speak Russian. I've met people like that here. I don't know if you meet people like that in America. And they get offended that we don't know Ukrainian, and if we don't know it, we have to learn it. Even for people who left a long time ago, it's hard. It's really hard. And most importantly, why? I don't speak Arabic, right? I lived in Israel. There are 2 languages there. Or when I travel somewhere, yes, I don't speak French. Why are Ukrainians offended that we don't know, that we come from the former Soviet Union and don't speak Ukrainian?
It doesn't offend Ukrainians. It offends some percentage of openly crazy people. Just openly crazy people with nothing to brag about except the Ukrainian language. But imagine the audacity of demanding that it not just be spoken by someone somewhere in Ukraine. This is just a complete madhouse.
It's a madhouse. You're absolutely right. Oh, you say there were no debates, but at the Latinina Portnikov debate, it was great. Latinina was stuttering and asking for a speech therapist's help. That's what was written. But did you see the debate?
That wasn't a debate. Latinina was just having a regular conversation. And by the way, back then, she didn't make any statements that I didn't like. That was a long time ago, a couple of years ago. Portnikov was prepared for propaganda and went there to debate. So Latinina is sitting there calmly talking, and he's sitting there almost insulting her. The crowd absolutely loved it. I didn't find anything impressive about it.
Did the crowd like that he was rude to Latinina? He just tore it apart.
Yeah, that Russia is nothing, and all that. Historically, basically, he laid everything out in a very harsh way, constantly interrupting, and people were thrilled.
And how did Latinina react to that?
She didn't participate in the debates. She behaved very politely back then. And well, you know, if you want to shout, go ahead. I mean, it was a long time ago. It was 2 or even 3 years ago. Well, by the way, you've reminded me of something I want to ask you. By debate standards, Portnikov won them. 3 years have passed. What next? Did it get worse? And that's why I think we should leave history to historians and focus on today and tomorrow. And these things, they are, well...
Dennis, I remember Vitaly Portnikov's recent reaction to our channel Radio Vera, to you, to me. Well, he didn't say anything about Denis Ivanov, but as for us just being enemies of Ukraine. And when I asked why, well, explain why, Vitaly, I didn't get an answer from him. They were just, yes, yes, sorry, please.
No, it's me. It's just that we're a bit out of sync.
I think...
You finished saying that. Don't be surprised by this. He's gonna have problems even with his own people. Even with his own people. Why? Because I'll show this on my stream tomorrow. He's such a scoundrel. He talks about terrible things, about the deaths of Ukrainians, about endless war, about horrors, and he smiles. Can you imagine how much pleasure he gets from this? He's crazy.
Well, yes, he's a very aggressive person. He's very aggressive, and it's very difficult to communicate with him. Dennis, look, I, so to speak, won't be around for a couple of weeks, and I know you'll be busy too. So what do you think if we take today, May 21st, and starting from today, is there, well, it's probably a naive question, but still, is there any, after all, you've been an analyst for a long time, but is there any prospect that there will be some changes in this Russia-Ukraine war for the better? Well, by for the better, I mean the end of the war, of course.
The coming months will show that.
Why the coming months, Dennis?
Because in the fall, there are midterm elections, which Zelensky is counting on so much, hoping for the Republicans' defeat, and he will be back on top. Let's just watch Trump's actions during this period.
continuation. And what makes Zelensky assume that the Republicans might suffer a fiasco?
Well, based on the ratings where the Republicans are currently leading by a lot, he probably considers Trump's policy to be a losing one. First of all, he leads the anti-Trump coalition, tries to damage his image in the world, tries as much as possible not to comply, not to compromise, in other words, to show that Trump doesn't decide anything. He is sort of working to lower Trump's rating on a global scale.
Well, wait, if he is working to lower Trump's rating, well, without Trump, Ukraine, well, it's unlikely it will hold out. Well, I don't want that. I hope it holds out, but without America, it will be very difficult.
No, they're not saying without America. They mean that the Democrats will get more power and will be able to make decisions about financial and military aid. But I have a question. What then? What next? Who will go to the front? What will that accomplish? More people will die. Then what? Are we planning to hang the Ukrainian flag on the Kremlin? No. So in conclusion, this will only make Zelensky appear stronger, both on a global scale and domestically, and the war will continue. That's all.
Yes, Dennis, as of today, there isn't a single reason that could be named to say that Trump has problems or that he won't be the president of the United States in the next year, 2, 3, 4, or however many. Thank you.
No, right now we're talking about the congressional elections.
Absolutely. But these elections, when are they? In November, right?
Yes. On November 3rd?
So is that what they're counting on, the results of these elections?
Yes. And then like now they take Congress, and then in 2028, a Democrat wins the presidency too.
Got it. And regarding Eurovision, did they ask you anything about the Ukrainian singer, if you even watched that Congress? Yes, I watched it. Well, I want to ask you, what did you think of the Congress? What are your thoughts about it? And regarding Israel and regarding Ukraine?
I watched the contest. I was rooting for Israel and for Ukraine, of course, but it's clear that Ukraine couldn't win since it's impossible to hold Eurovision in Ukraine.
Nothing.
I have no questions about Ukraine's performance, though there were often decent performances in past years. In general, the contest is politicized and the audience behaved terribly when they disrupted the performance of the artist from Israel. It was outrageous. I told Zhenya that if he had won, they might have stormed the stage and torn him apart when he sang the winner's song. Well, you know, everyone understands this issue too. I'm not terribly surprised that something like this can happen in Europe.
Dennis, tell me please, what was the reaction towards this Noam who sang Michel from Israel? And when Iceland, Ireland, Slovenia, the Netherlands, and Spain, so to speak, withdrew from the contest, tell me, do you remember in your lifetime such an anti-Jewish demonstration and such hatred towards Jews as what is happening today? And in particular regarding the Eurovision contest, which we all watched recently.
I've never seen anything like this in my life. As I said, it's monstrous that this could happen in Western Europe. Most importantly, if Israel, like Russia, had attacked someone, it would be a different conversation. They attacked Israel and Israel ended up being blamed. If you think that Netanyahu acted extremely harshly in Gaza, well, hold rallies against Netanyahu.
Call Netanyahu names.
Why target an artist from Israel? What was he supposed to do? Say, okay, go ahead and kill me, praise Hamas? I mean, where's the logic in that? Well, you know, it's not the people themselves. They were helped.
What is this? I mean, explain.
These are the forces that help Zelensky, that help Ukraine get to the state it's now in. So it's just the agenda, and today Israel is very much out of favor with these forces.
But you put it very well. You say, well, they were disrupting his performance, right? They wouldn't let him sing. They were shouting and so on. The contest is over. Israel took second place. So what they wanted didn't happen, as you like to say. And Dennis, well...
Yes. Well, so nothing happened, basically. Nothing.
And nothing?
I'm not saying that Bulgaria won undeservedly. I don't think so. But I just think that they couldn't let Israel win. And Bulgaria was the best candidate. So that's how it turned out. But let's also see what happens next. I just don't understand the ultimate goal either. Look, Spain withdrew from the contest. We select the largest country that withdrew
from the contest.
I'm surprised Slovenia is considering this, as they have other issues. Spain is too, likely because their leftist leader Sanchez serves Soros. That's the main reason. I don't think the Spanish population is anti-Semitic. They're likely just being influenced. I doubt everyone there thinks about it so globally. It's just scoundrels giving power to another scoundrel. Nothing will change. The government isn't changing soon.
You know, I was listening to Yuri Shevchuk. He recently had an anniversary, and he said this phrase. He said, "Why can't I get through to people and explain to them that the president of the country is not the motherland? The president will change, the politicians will change, but the motherland is the motherland." And many people associate the motherland with the leader of the country. Do you agree with this statement?
Shevchuk put it even more bluntly. He said that the motherland is not the president's ass. That's very eloquent. And this applies to him as well, you see. He really felt it all himself. All these eras, starting from the Soviet Union and what's happening now in Russia and in all the post-Soviet countries. In our post-Soviet countries, unfortunately, the motherland is the president's ass. That's the common view.
Motherland, Dennis, thank you so much. And I want to say that despite all these, well, let's say some comments that, well, Dennis Manza tells me not to read them, right? Well, yes, of course, I shouldn't. But I can't help wanting to take a look and see what it's about. And I want to believe that this audience will be objective, fair, intelligent, bright, and interesting. Interesting. I know these are my naive dreams, but still, I hope that someday it will happen, or maybe it won't. That's just how things go. And thank you so much, Denis Yelisevich, for coming, for giving us the opportunity to talk with you and to hear you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Goodbye.